Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're completely cutting through the usual AI marketing hype to look at something pretty rare, a heavily audited, verified AI ecology. Specifically, we're diving into the Harness Skill Development Evidence Report for Nova and Mind. We're going to explore exactly how the developer, known as StunSpot, took basic prompt engineering and transformed it into rigorous cognitive systems engineering. We'll trace the whole journey, the curation, the failed reviews, the strict evidence boundaries, and that final build week submission, just to see what a true, honest AI product actually looks like under the hood.
Okay, so here's our roadmap for today. We'll go from prompts to systems, explore the anatomy of Nova and Mind, understand the value of preserved failure, define measurement versus interpretation, and finally, look at the next ecology frontier.
Right. Let's jump straight into Section 1, from prompts to systems, curating a verified AI ecology.
So you know how standard AI marketing usually sells us what the report brilliantly calls a sack of buttons? It's just a collection of disconnected prompts. But a curated ecology, that implies an interconnected, dependent system where tools actually collaborate and function together. This report makes it incredibly clear that this systemic integration, getting all the pieces to work as a unified whole, was the true achievement of this contest build.
And really understanding this achievement requires a total shift in mindset. It absolutely wasn't about frantic greenfield authorship during a hackathon, where you just assume everything was newly coded from scratch. Instead, it was all about rigorous curation. The records show they imported 393 source files and deliberately excluded 182 candidates that just didn't make the cut. Ultimately, they shipped 443 files. The real magic here is in the productization of an existing skill estate, securing it and packaging it into a reliable, working product.
Moving on to Section 2, Anatomy of Nova and Mind, the two-layer architecture.
Okay, there is a highly intentional number serving as the foundation for this entire package, and that number is exactly 28. 28 bounded skill handles, or roots. Think of it like a perfectly engineered Swiss Army knife, with 28 very specific, highly reliable tools, rather than some infinite black box that promises absolutely everything but guarantees nothing. In a world where AI developers are constantly boasting about, unlimited capabilities, defining a strict, bounded limit of 28 specific skills, that proves we're looking at a focused, genuinely engineered system.
Now, this architecture is split into two very distinct layers. Mind acts as this broad faculty system. It handles 16 of those skill roots across 147 files and is designed as independently installable plugins. Nova, on the other hand, well, she carries the heavier, tool-rich specialist load. Even though Nova has fewer handles, just 12, it contains a massive 296 files. Nova is basically the accountable front door, packing in the deep verification, the research, and the memory surfaces. Now, you might expect the resources to be spread evenly across all these skills, right? Actually, no. This system proves deliberate architectural concentration. Nearly 60% of all the files are dedicated to just the top 5 roots. You have TestForge, Ludus Continuum, Cognitive Continuity, and Signalum demanding the most resources. And why is that? Because they support the essential maintenance, the state machinery, and the verification processes that make the entire release trustworthy in the first place. It is exactly where you want the most weight.
Let's look at Section 3, the value of preserved failure verification as product input.
This is honestly my favorite part. In the TestForge review cycle, the system forced 3 distinct re-entry cycles before finally granting a conditional pass. Now, those 3 failed reviews, they aren't a weakness at all. Actually, they are the ultimate proof of the system's strict integrity. In software engineering, hiding failure is kind of a common instinct. But here, the negative evidence actually changed the staging, the custody, and the documentation. The verification machinery genuinely worked because it caught flaws.
The anti-hype ethos of this project is just so clear here. You absolutely cannot let one kind of evidence impersonate another. Preserving these failures proves this is a serious harness. It doesn't try to win arguments using flashy marketing adjectives or by pretending a simple documentation check is the same thing as a universal capability check. The report specifically praises the system for splitting package integrity from behavior, keeping those human authority gates completely explicit.
Which brings us to Section 4, Measurement versus Interpretation, establishing the evidence boundary.
The report lays out this brutal but incredibly honest rule framework. Static files simply measure package structure. Recorded calls, they just measure orchestration. Submission receipts only prove external state. Think about how often you hear tech companies boast about how many API calls their AI makes, or how big their code base is. This framework lays down a really harsh reality check. Those metrics alone absolutely do not measure universal competence. Just because you have a lot of code, well, that doesn't inherently mean your AI is a universal genius.
For instance, we know there are exactly 443 verified shipping files, and we know their source hashes. That is a documented fact. But strict discipline deliberately prevents raw metrics, like that high file count, from being falsely interpreted as a generic quality score or as a sign of completely new authorship. It forces us to stick purely to what the evidence actually bounds. Nothing more, nothing less.
Finally, Section 5, the next ecology frontier, moving beyond the static package.
Because the system currently relies on just 7 named, designed live prompts for its behavioral evidence, the biggest unanswered question remains: can this 28-scale ecology actually handle dynamic, unscripted chaos? You see, having the skills is one thing, but making sure they don't step all over each other's toes during a complex, multi-step human request, that is an entirely different engineering challenge.
To answer that, the next frontier demands this rigorous clean host matrix, which is essentially a completely blank slate testing environment. Out in the real world, developers need to test if these agents can seamlessly collaborate. Can they implicitly select the right tool without being micromanaged? Can one skill properly yield to another? Can the system recover gracefully if a workflow gets interrupted? And most importantly, as they run these tests, they have to avoid the temptation to translate narrow, specific test passes into wild claims of universal AI capability.
I want to leave you with this final, truly provocative thought from the report's conclusion. It states that while NOVA can structure evidence and propose tests, true AI systems require external human accountability. No agent should ever grade its own homework. Collaborative dynamics, the human partners, they retain the absolute authority over the release and any claims made. As we move into an era of increasingly autonomous agents, ask yourself, in the systems you rely on every day, who is actually sitting on the Supreme Court of their release? Are we letting the AI grade itself?